Thank you for joining us. My name is Daliah Naor. I'm a senior manager here at Avid and Market Solutions. I'm joined today by Craig Wilson, product evangelist for video and media, and Martin Appleton, senior manager for graphics and video servers. A quick look at the agenda. We'll have a short introduction. We'll talk about Avid's ingest and playout solutions, as well as the needs of the media industry. And then we'll shift gears and have a panel discussion where we'll discuss such topics as the challenges of moving from SDI to IP, video formats and distribution channels, the role of remote workflows, enabling cloud capabilities, and more. This will be followed by a question and answer session and a quick summary. So I'm sure you guys are all pretty familiar with how the Q&A button works, but just to remind you, there's a Q&A button on the bottom. We invite you to ask questions, and we will be responding to the questions using the chat. If you're watching on any of Avid's social channels, we'll be monitoring those as well, and we will answer the questions directly there. So let's get started. A little bit about Avid's ingest and playout solutions. So Avid's ingest and playout solutions are fully integrated to meet the needs of the modern broadcaster today and in the future, on premises and in the cloud. Avid's video server solutions are constantly being updated with new capabilities to address the rapidly changing media market, including support for new and emerging ingest and playout protocols such as IP. The Avid video server family has many options to address the challenges faced by our customers when it comes to ingest and playout. And as such, we offer a streamlined workflow, tested, seamless integration with Avid's media production ecosystem for efficient end-to-end workflow, a future-proof solution, continuous updates and innovation to ensure relevance and industry standards, compliance across all our family of solutions, performance when it matters, lightning fast response time for quick access and delivery of high-quality video content. Our solutions are powerful and reliable, and they're scalable, with flexible options to expand storage and processing capabilities as the needs grow. So now let's begin to explore Avid's ingest and playout solutions, explaining more in depth the benefits which each one provides and where they fit into the workflow. On this slide, we'll start with Avid's newest offering, Avid Streamio. This is very much our next generation ingest and playout solution, software-based, and with the capability to deliver SDI today and in the future compressed and uncompressed IP streams. Besides it, we have Media Central Stream, scalable software for compressed IP stream contribution. And in the bottom row, we have our FastServe family of servers, FastServe Ingest, FastServe IO for both ingest and playout workflows, and FastServe Playout. So let's set the scene for the market and some of the challenges you might be facing. First of all, managing the different technology changes from SDI to UHD, 1080p, HDR, and IP. So as SDI is not going away anytime soon, we are in the midst of a technology transition. As we also know, our users want to explore the possibilities of cloud hosting working, or at least data center hosted working, but still retain on-premises capabilities as well. Seamless workflows and integrations are key, of course, and video servers are very much the workhorses when it comes to media production. They just need to work. And as the market is cost-driven, with a cost per channel always a prime consideration. Let's shift gears and discuss some of the major topics today when it comes to ingest and playout. And I'd like to invite Craig and Martin to the discussion.
Great, thanks a lot, Daliah. So if we move on to the next slide, so as Daliah has indicated there, there are a whole range of different challenges that the industry are facing at the moment, and what we want to explore in the next section is really looking at these in a little bit more detail, and taking advantage of Martin's great knowledge of the industry to do that. So Martin, as we know, SDI has been around for a very long time. Very robust, very stable. Everyone knows it. And a lot of infrastructure, of course, still involves SDI, but there's no doubt that we are in the midst of a technology change. So when you're discussing with customers, what is it they're looking to do? Are they still wanting to maintain SDI because they're very familiar with it, or is there a recognition that IP is the future?
So I think it's a combination of the two. Customers still very much require SDI workflows to be supported. They have a lot of equipment that has already been invested in that supports SDI, but they're very conscious of a potential move to IP in the either for a greenfield site or for a limited facility within the studio. So they want everything to be IP ready, or to understand what our path to IP would be, so that when they're investing in a technology now, they know that it will support IP maybe 1, 2, or 3 years from now, when they are ready to make that transition.
How important is it, though, to continue that support for SDI? Because, as I mentioned, it's been around for such a long time, and people know really how it works.
Exactly. SDI just works. It's very easy to take a new piece of equipment from a manufacturer that supports SDI and plug it into your SDI infrastructure, and everything will just continue to work pretty much straight away. Whether that's working in HD now or even migrating to 1080p or UHD, there's robust SDI-based technologies available now, and it's very straightforward for the station managers to adopt something new in SDI without facing additional challenges of moving to an IP workflow.
But the reality, of course, I think within the industry is that there's a recognition that SDI, as robust as it is and as flexible as it has been, it has limitations, particularly when we begin to look at cloud-enabled environments and people working perhaps in a more distributed way. So is that the direction of travel that we see the industry going in, where people are looking at data center, having cloud-ready workflows, and making that available through an IP infrastructure?
That's definitely playing a big part of this. When we're talking to customers, they're looking at consolidating in an on-premises data center and treating SDI devices as edge devices. They want to have IP and, let's say, both compressed IP and uncompressed IP as a core part of the workflow once they move to these data centers. In the short term, they'll use SDI and perhaps bridge this with a converter. But long term, they want to be able to switch from SDI to IP and fully embrace this, the efficiencies that this can offer them.
I guess something else, though, is that while the introduction of IP for ingest and playout represents, a significant change in technology for the perhaps more technical operators who are involved in those areas, it's also really important that the introduction of these technologies is then non-disruptive for the production staff that are actually working as part of that. So how do we balance those two things out?
Well, I think IP is more around content acquisition and playout. It's for the operators, it should just be another piece of content that is moving around within the studio. They don't necessarily care that it's coming in via SDI or IP. So we need to preserve all of the workflows that they are familiar with and maintain them regardless of the underlying technology that sits in the background. So, for instance, for FastServe, we support both SDI and IP now. For the end user, they're ingesting content, they're playing content out. The fact that it's over IP is not relevant necessarily to the end user. This is part of the infrastructure in the background, much like they don't consider that something is coming in over SDI. It is a signal. It's a piece of media that needs to move from one location to another.
Great, thanks, Martin. Daliah, if we move on to the next slide, because there are a range of different topics that we want to cover here. So, of course, if you are working either an SDI or an IP environment, there are still some fundamentals that you want to have as part of that. And I guess really what this is all about, Martin, is talking about the flexibility that can come from a solution. So how important is it that, the bullets that are listed here about common protocols, mixed codecs, different channel counts, how important is it for the flexibility of an organization to have all of these included in any kind of ingest and playout solution?
So I think it's critical for all of the broadcasters that are working with our solutions that we have this flexibility to work with, let's say, the house codec or codecs that are in operation within that facility, and that we need to be open to whatever the customer requires from us, rather than us imposing upon them strict limitations. In Streamio, that extends to us being able to mix codecs and resolutions on each channel. So you can have 1080i, 720p, 1080p on the same system as ingest and playout with different codecs, because we recognize that forcing people down a very narrow path isn't necessarily like the right approach today. We've also taken an approach of having very flexible channel count. In FastServe, we have up to 8 ingest or 4 in, 4 out for FastServe IO, or 8 out for FastServe Playout. But in Streamio, we can have a combination of inputs and outputs on the same system. So right now we have a 4-channel setup. In about a month, we're launching 2-channel and 8-channel setups to allow customers to have the flexibility to build systems and deployment models that match their production needs. For instance, we had a lot of requests to have a very low channel count so that for smaller broadcasters, they maybe take 2 systems so they can have a main and a backup, without having to invest in a very large 8-channel server. And on the other hand, we have other large broadcasters that want to minimize the footprint in their rack by having a big 8-channel server to manage everything. So adopting an approach that's very flexible, that allows the broadcaster to work in the way that suits them, is very key to the products that we're creating now in Avid for the video server market.
You mentioned there about, some of our larger customers who, will have installations that perhaps will have 50 or 60 or even perhaps 100 ingest channels. So how important is it also to have a solution where, rather than managing each of those channels and each of those devices separately, they can actually manage them through perhaps a single user interface to allow them to do that?
So that's exactly why we have products like Media Central Acquire and Media Central Command that allow a user to manage all of their ingest channels from one interface within Media Central. It's not tying one interface to one server. It's allowing one user to control whichever servers and channels they've been authorized to access. So they can schedule recordings, make crash recordings from one interface across multiple servers so they're managing all of the productions. And similarly, we have Media Central Command, which is allowing the user in Playout to control multiple systems and multiple channels from one interface.
Yeah, great. I think it's really important to have that flexibility that spans across the system. It allows for a much more efficient way of working. And you talked about Media Central Acquire there. For people who perhaps haven't heard that, it's an app in Media Central Cloud UX that allows you to control multiple different devices. So definitely worth checking out on the Avid website and getting more information about that. So Daliah, perhaps if we move on to the next slide. Remote working, of course, is something that we've seen, a huge rise of in recent times. Partly prompted, of course, by COVID and the response to that. But it's something that is now becoming, much more kind of embedded in the workflows that we have. So part of this, of course, in the move to remote workflows is also about working with web-based tools. So what are Avid doing around the utilization of web-based tools to enable something like remote workflows?
So now all of our server products have a web-based interface that allows for direct control of the server. Both Media Central Stream, Streamio, and FastServe products have a web interface that allows the user to control the ingest and playout channels, to create playlists of content for productions, all without having to be directly next to the server itself.
So that's, again, a response to customer requests, isn't it? It's about trying to make sure that we are providing solutions that are adaptable to their needs, because their needs are continuing to change and evolve as well.
Definitely. It allows broadcasters to move away from the model where you have to have an application installed on a PC in order to manage your production. Now, by moving everything to a web-based interface, the operators can work anywhere. We have users for Media Central Stream that are based in separate locations from where the servers are, and they're managing everything online as if they were sitting next to the server.
So Martin, another area that is really important, and we might talk a little bit more about this later as well, is around the whole issue of security, and particularly when it comes to working remotely, working through web-based tools, perhaps working in the cloud. Security is something that comes up a lot of times in discussion with customers. So from an Avid perspective, how important is security when we are developing products like Streamio, for example, that we've talked about?
So security is very important to us. We've seen over the last few years cyber attacks happening on some broadcasters in Europe. So we have multi-factor authentication for both the Media Central interfaces and for Streamio and for Media Central Stream to keep the interfaces and the access to the systems underneath secure and in control of the IT team within a production facility rather than necessarily within the hands of the users. I think this is critically important as we move to these web-based interfaces, and we continue to work with distributed staffing, where you'll have staff that are not necessarily on site with the servers in a managed location.
So Martin, let's talk a little bit about the challenge of moving to the cloud. We talked a little bit there about security, but I guess when we talk about moving to the cloud, we're still seeing customers in a transition period of assessing what the cloud can bring for them. And so when you're discussing with customers, what are the kind of concerns that they're bringing up when they're looking at the cloud? What would you say is their priority as they assess it?
So first of all, there is no one cloud deployment that is common. Everyone has either different vendors or different deployment methods in mind, whether it's on-premises cloud, a combination of on-premises and remote. So at the moment, it seems like we have a tailored approach for each customer, and potentially they have different provider that they want to work with. Cost implications are very important around the cost of paying for computing resources in a remote cloud, and also the egress of video content. At the moment, we have Media Central Stream that is cloud deployable. This obviously makes a lot of sense because it's dealing with compressed IP. We're looking at how IP would be adopted in a cloud environment. SDI is still very much treated like an edge device. There is a device that's ingesting this, and then once the content exists within the system and is either something that's sitting inside a Nexus or locally on the server, it's something that can move around within the cloud environment. So I think it's going to take some time before this is settled, but I think we have a variety of approaches that might be taken.
Yeah, so I think it's really important, Martin, it is very much about, balancing expectations. I think we see this when we have discussions with customers, that everyone's at a different stage of their transition, whether it's to IP, whether it's to cloud, whether it's to, private data centers. I think we much more see, hybrid ways of working as the way that the industry is going, at least for the next few years as well. So thanks a lot for sharing your thoughts there on a whole variety of different topics that we see within the industry. At this point, I'll hand back to Daliah, because Daliah, I think you've got some questions that you want to ask.
Yep, thank you. So I have a few questions. So first of all, Craig, I'll address this to you. So what do you think are the big trends that we see in the 2024 ingest and playout market?
I think we're expecting to see a continuation really of what we've seen in previous years. I mean, I think the whole transition from SDI to IP, is a really, really interesting one. We've recently published a blog actually looking back at the sort of history of Avid video servers moving from, SD workflows through to HD and now moving into IP workflows as well. And actually got a kind of huge reaction online from people reflecting back on where we were and looking a bit, ahead to the future as well. So I think that transition will continue. I think we'll continue to see more customers move towards IP, but we cannot ignore the fact that they have so much infrastructure which is still SDI based that they're not just going to get rid of, to move directly to IP. Different when people, of course, are moving to a greenfield site, and they're probably going to want to have that as much IP based as possible. But I think we'll continue to see that. I think we'll also begin to see people look at ways of how can they integrate perhaps some AI services. Recently at the IBC trade show, we unveiled what's called Avid Ada, which is our umbrella for all of our AI developments. So I think we'll begin to look to see how people can take advantage of that. Again, if you have a look online, you can find out more information about Avid Ada and some of the developments that we have around there. And then the final one really is about, and it kind of goes hand in hand with IP, is people moving to and assessing, what the cloud, can bring for them. I think from an Avid perspective, I think what we of course expect to see is, continued developments in our ingest and playout solutions to address the kind of needs that we've talked about, in the event so far. So it's looking at UHD, it's looking at HDR, it's looking at different channel counts, it's looking at compressed IP and uncompressed IP streams as well. But again, I think Martin made an important point earlier on where the delivery of these kind of technologies, one thing that's fundamentally important is that they are non-disruptive to the creative community that are taking advantage of the material coming in, whether that's, a journalist who's looking to turn around a news story, or someone who's perhaps working for a sports channel who's wanting to produce some highlights. That, their concern is not whether it's coming in from an SDI feed or an IP stream that's coming in from somewhere. So it's critically important for us that these developments are non-disruptive. They're simply contributing and enabling, different types of workflow, but fundamentally they're allowing people to, continue to work and then deliver their stories, their programs, their packages, to whatever platform needs to get them.
Thank you, Greg. Another question that we have here is, can I use FastServe and Avid Streamio in the same environment? Martin, you can take that one, please.
Yes, you definitely can. They are both supported platforms. FastServe is an integrated solution that's used for very specific workflows for ingest and playout. Streamio, similarly, same user interface, different platform underneath. This happens to be like an off-the-shelf server from something like Dell or HP that allows similar ingest and playout. The whole goal was that we would have a similar interface between the platforms so that a user could move from FastServe to Streamio or from Streamio to FastServe within the same facility and have a frictionless experience. Similarly, Acquire can manage both FastServe and Media Central Stream and Streamio platforms seamlessly, so that it's very much an approach where customers can choose the hardware and software mix that matches their production requirements and have the same experience using all of them.
So Martin, let me ask you this question. What do we recommend to people who are currently using AirSpeed?
So AirSpeed is proven server solution from Avid. It's been on the market for many years. Customers understand how it works. They know what it can do, and they want a replacement or successor to AirSpeed that offers the same workflows, similar functionalities, but with, of course, more new capabilities that AirSpeed could never have. So we developed with had FastServe on the market for several years, and we have some customers that were using Airspeed that have migrated over to FastServe. Some customers wanted some more flexibility that FastServe doesn't necessarily offer in terms of like the assignment of ingest and playout channels on a single system. So we consider that Avid Streamio is a very worthy alternative. I'm wary of saying the word like successor because it will allow people to make a comparison between two different products that maybe shouldn't be compared quite in that way. Streamio has a lot of features that were present in Airspeed. We have a very aggressive development plan that means we're going to add more and more features and capabilities to Streamio in the coming years that will further bridge some of the gaps in that might be considered things that might be considered as gaps with the Airspeed workflow, whilst also introducing things like the compressed IP and uncompressed IP that would never have been possible in Airspeed. So I think we have a range of products that allow customers of Airspeed to migrate to new solutions, whether it's an integrated solution like FastServe or an off-the-shelf solution like Media Central Stream and Avid Streamio, and to preserve the workflows that they're familiar with.
Thank you, Martin. Craig, so one last question here. Can I use Avid Streamio in a non-Avid Media Central environment?
Yeah, that's a very good point, Daliah. So one of the things about Avid Streamio is that it has lots and lots of capabilities, and some of them we've talked about a little bit earlier on. But one of the things it can do, for example, is that it can ingest not just OP Atom media, but it can also ingest OP1A media, which of course is a media format that's in use by many other applications outside of applications within Avid Media Central. It can also ingest to generic storage. It doesn't necessarily need to ingest into Avid Nexus storage. Now, of course, there's lots of advantages of using Avid Streamio in a Media Central environment with Avid Nexus storage, which is obviously perfectly tuned for media workflows, but it's certainly not limited to that. So there's many different workflow examples and scenarios that Avid Streamio could fit into, not just those supported by Media Central with Avid Nexus.
Great. So thank you, Craig and Martin, for that conversation. Let's just wrap it up a little bit here. So Avid's ingest and playout solutions provide a fully integrated solution for the needs of the modern broadcaster, both today and in the future, whether this is on-prem or in the cloud. And Avid's video server solutions are constantly being updated, as we discussed, with new capabilities to address the rapidly changing media market, including support for new and emerging ingest and playout protocols from UHD to SDI, over IP, and IP streams. So if you're interested in getting more information, we invite you to go to our Ingest and Playout solution page on the Avid website, or you can scan the QR code you can see here on the right to go straight to that page. Thank you, Craig and Martin, for joining me today, and thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. Thank you, and goodbye.